Welcome to the Movie in Your Mind podcast, where we dive into classic movies that have left a significant cultural mark, but that our guests have somehow never seen. Each episode, we explore their expectations and imagined ideas about these iconic films, then contrast them with their immediate reactions after finally viewing them. Today, we are watching Dr. Strangelove. Welcome to the Movie in Your Mind podcast. Today, I'm joined by Earl Bolden Jr., who is a producer and director for Bolden Pictures.
That's me.
Welcome. And you have never seen Dr. Strangelove.
Correct.
That's correct.
Never seen it. Never seen it.
So what is Bolden Pictures working on these days?
Yeah, so a few different projects. Ultimately, what I would love for Bolden Pictures to be known for is producing action thrillers. Bolden Pictures these days, I've got a slate of about 9 projects, some television, some film, ranging on a variety of different subject matters. A lot of cultural things, some business stuff, some tech stuff, action tech stuff, so to speak. I've got an erotic thriller I'm working
Sweet.
on.
It's been a while since
you
those
know,
have been
yeah,
out there. I remember the golden age in the 90s.
exactly.
And
Yeah, Bolden Pictures is working on quite a few things.
awesome.
Yeah,
I can't wait to see them.
yeah.
So you
Thank
do a range of stuff like docs, shorts.
Yes, documentary wise, my father, when he was living in Los Angeles, was a member of a domino group where they would play dominoes every Monday night to coincide with Monday Night Football. It was a
Nice.
social club.
Nice.
And they would have like a trophy at the end of the season and all that. So I did a documentary on their club. It's called
cool.
Have Domino Will Travel. Yeah,
Sweet.
based here in LA. Yeah, it was cool.
Can people see that on YouTube?
Yes,
Or? Okay.
on YouTube and on Vimeo. I host
Okay.
Bolden Pictures on Vimeo.
Oh, perfect. So how did you consume movies growing up?
A lot of stuff was in the home,
Mm.
but I would have to sneak in to movies a lot. I remember I got in trouble one time. I snuck in to watch Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Sweet.
And my mom was like definitely not happy about me sneaking in to watch that movie. It was great. Even back then, I was like, I understood, what the film was about.
Yeah.
But Toy Story, Bad Boys, I know I'm jumping way all around. But
Yeah.
Toy Story, Bad Boys, what else? Star Wars.
Yeah, of course. Did you catch all these, like you said, in the theater, or most of it was at home watching through TV? Or
Yeah. I remember my parents taking me to go see Toy Story. And then I think Bad Boys, I went with like a group of my friends. We also snuck into that.
Nice. So did you just get a ticket for something else?
Correct.
And then
Correct.
jump
Or
the line
it was
whatever?
like we would go see the movie that we
Right.
saw, and then we were already there, and then we would just sneak into the next movie.
Nice. So you do your own
Correct.
double
My
feature.
own,
Yeah, nice.
half off double feature.
Yeah. Did you ever get caught?
No.
Oh, really?
No.
Okay.
You gotta be sneaky with it, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the house, like my parents had bought like the old classic movies, classic animation stuff. So Bambi, of course.
Yeah.
Land Before Time.
Yeah.
Right. So, and then random stuff that would come on TV, like In the Heat of the Night.
Right.
Whatever 80s, 70s, 80s movies. So yeah, it was me more so trying to go and watch the movies versus like my parents being, hey, sit down and watch this movie.
Right.
So I was always kind of trying to like, what's on TV?
So you would strike out on your own and then try
Yeah.
and find out what was
Yeah.
good. Like, so did
Yeah.
you see Die Hard 3 before Die Hard 1 and then roll back to see those? Or?
No, I think we had already seen Die Hard 1 somewhere because that's how I knew about it.
Right.
It wasn't something that my parents approved of.
Right.
My parents were Christian and Catholic,
Okay.
so super,
Yeah.
Super like, we don't want him to watch,
Right. So obviously Toy Story was good. Like, where would the line be where they'd be like, oh, no, you can't watch
I mean,
that
PG-13
one.
stuff,
PG-13,
right?
okay.
Preferably PG-13 stuff. Of course, when I got older, I mean, we went as a family to go see Next Friday, I believe it was.
The sequel.
The sequel. Yeah. That was interesting that my parents wanted to go see that, I know.
You're like, this come full circle.
Yeah.
Bringing me to Next Friday. All right, okay.
So, yeah, that was interesting.
So, are you a Kubrick fan?
Yes, and not like a stan,
Right.
But definitely love the stuff. So
how many of his movies have you seen, and why haven't you seen this?
I tried to watch Clockwork Orange. Didn't quite get through it.
Oh, okay. How come?
But
It's a little rough. Like, there's
yeah.
a lot of violence
Yeah,
and
maybe if I watched it again now as an almost 40-year-old, maybe I'd be cool, but
right,
trying
right.
to watch it when I was younger, I was like, not for me.
Yeah, I think your parents would not want
Yeah,
you watching
definitely
that.
not
Like,
not approve of that at all. Yeah, I mean, for this one, I remember when I was in film school, this was like on the list
right,
of film
right.
school, definitely a film school film, but just never got around to it.
Okay.
Never got around to it.
But
So,
have you seen 2001
yeah,
or
yeah, Space
okay.
Odyssey. Yeah, that was fascinating. Obviously, well beyond its time.
Yeah.
So, it's cool to see where we are with that. Yeah.
And Shining, have you seen
Oh,
Shining?
yeah. Oh,
Okay.
come on.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. I saw it much later in life, but I remember seeing a lot of photo stills of
Mhm.
him through the door,
Yes, yes.
after
Iconic. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
he
yeah.
cuts it with the axe. And I just remember being a kid, because like my connection to him is I would always see Jack Nicholson at the Lakers games.
Right,
So I was like,
right.
oh,
There's that guy.
that's Jack Nicholson.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's like, so he's like, what is this? And then you come to find out it's from The Shining.
Well, that makes
Yeah.
sense though, because Doctor Strangelove is for Stanley Kubrick
Yeah.
stands. It's one of his quote unquote masterpieces, but it's not up there with The Shining
Yeah.
and 2001.
Yeah.
So I could see if you were lodged at A Clockwork Orange
Yeah.
and couldn't finish that, you're not
Right.
gonna like
Right.
roll through Doctor
Right.
Strangelove. So
Yeah.
that kind of makes sense. So what do you know about it as far as like the genre?
Dark comedy, kind of farcy type thing
Hmm.
is how it was described.
And so do you know any
And
famous lines from it? Have you
no, I
no,
haven't.
okay.
I even
Right.
I didn't watch the trailer,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
nothing,
good,
because I knew
good.
we were coming. So I was like,
Right.
let me just go into
But
this
you don't have a
blind.
friend that will be like, blah, blah, blah. That's from
Nah,
this. Like, you
nah,
haven't seen Doctor
no, I
Strangelove?
have
Because,
not.
okay, all
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Do you know what
I
actors
have
star
not.
in it?
I know James Earl Jones is in
Yeah.
it.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace, obviously. We lost a lot of actors in general, but a lot of black actors this year in
Yeah.
particular. A lot of black entertainers.
It sucks. The older you get, the more
Yeah,
great people we lose. I remember
yeah,
watching the In Memoriam when I was a kid, and I was like,
right.
I don't care about these
Right.
people because I
Damn.
was so young. But now, the older I get, I'm like, I care more and more about
Yeah,
all the people that are passing, and it's rough. Anyway.
yeah.
So do you know
His
George C. Scott? Have you seen his films?
no. Who?
Okay. He's in like Hardcore and Exorcist 3
Okay, it's
and
3.
Peter Sellers. Do you know?
Yeah, Peter Sellers.
Okay.
Yeah,
Are you
yeah,
a
yeah.
fan of his or yeah,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
so? Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But hopefully he's good in this.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah,
We'll find out if you're a fan or not.
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
So, what do you think happens in Act 1? What do you picture as far as
yeah. There's probably this unhinged general who's
Mhm.
maybe like war, like, "Arr,
Right,
let's blow
right.
up something
Yeah, yeah,
today."
yeah.
You never want to just think about the Soviet Union and Russia. That's just someone you never want to beef with.
Right,
So it's like,
right.
why are we dropping bombs on the Soviet
Yeah,
Union?
yeah, yeah.
That was, my first thought.
So, you think it is just this rah-rah general?
Maybe someone ticked him off. Maybe he couldn't get a woman from over there or
Right,
something.
right.
I don't know, whatever like unhinged generals do, like I don't, yeah, like why would you want to bomb anyone regardless?
Right. And then so in Act 2, what's gonna happen then?
Yeah,
Is
the
there
heart
is
of the story.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so obviously, so there's gonna be repercussion from that, right?
right.
So, I'm sure people are trying to talk to them being the Soviet Union.
Mhm.
And who was their president back then?
Is it Khrushchev? This
Yeah,
is
yeah.
1964,
Oh, okay.
so
All right.
Kennedy versus yeah.
Khrushchev. All
Okay.
right, cool. So obviously there would be some people trying to talk him down from retaliation.
Right.
Obviously there would be some people on our side like, hey, let's not do this again, or let's don't bomb more.
Mm-hmm.
And then whatever the ancillary effects are, people's families like thinking, we may be going to war again, or was whatever else. So
Right.
yeah,
What do you think the tone will be? Because it's going to be a comedy, but like
yeah,
the stuff that we're
yeah.
talking about is kind of heavy.
Right,
So
right,
like
right. Well, yeah, I mean that's dark comedy, so it's
right.
it's almost satire,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
Satire and subversive. That's
Yes,
it. Yeah,
yeah, totally.
satirical and subversive.
Yeah.
I think it would be, making fun of these people,
Right.
right? But in a serious topic,
Right.
right? War and all that, but making it silly and subversive, you hope people would take from it that like, hey, these things happen, but this is something we don't have to follow in the future.
Right.
We don't have to be like war torn all the time, war hungry all the time. And, just making fun of these people who are like my big stick, you know,
Right, right,
even
exactly.
though I have a small dick, I have to,
Yeah,
you know,
they
like
compensate
you have
for
to
it. Like,
compensate. You know what I mean? So yeah,
do you know the full title of this? It's not
yeah, it's
just
a
Doctor
long ass thing. It's
Strangelove.
Doctor
It's
Strangelove and how
or
I,
How I Learned to Stop
yeah,
Worrying and Love the
yeah,
Bomb. Like,
yeah.
what does that mean to you? Like,
Oh my gosh. I mean, I think it's if we're just talking about the general's perspective,
mhm,
I think what that means is why worry about diplomacy with other countries when I could just bomb them
right,
or I could just take them out or assassinate someone. I don't want to say it's a very American ideal, but a
right.
very non peaceful and non loving ideal.
Right. So you think it's just that they can bully countries
Yeah.
around with impunity and not have to worry about consequences because we're America
Yeah.
and we can do what we want?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, and that's both sides of the aisle. Every president, no matter what their affiliation, has dropped bombs on other countries.
that's
So,
true. Sad
you
but
know.
true.
So, yeah.
Well, what do you think will happen in the end? Do you think this will there be a nuclear explosion? What will
Well, I'm hoping not. So I'm
Mhm.
gonna say no. I guess if it was perfect world, that general would either resign or get kicked out of the military. You know, it would the conflict would be resolved diplomatically.
Right. So if this general is sort of the antagonist of the whole
Mm.
thing, who is going to be there to stop him? What characters do you see in your head
Yeah, well,
to
it kind of reminds me of a like 12 Angry Men, so to speak, in the
Right,
war
right.
room situation. So,
Yeah.
you know, all these people just trying to talk him off the ledge, so to
Right,
speak.
right. And would
I
they
kind
be
of
like diplomats, presidents, or what do you
yeah,
think?
I
Like,
think a combination of a bunch of different people with varying views as well. I
right,
imagine there's gonna be some people in there like, hey, let's bomb them some more, you
right,
know?
right. Do you think
Yeah.
other countries will be involved, or is this going to be?
Well, they'll have words for sure, but it just reminded me too. I think last week or whatever, sorry to jump
No, go
ahead
ahead.
to present time. Putin, I guess, mentioned that they have these some type of like intercontinental
Mm-hmm.
missiles.
Yeah,
And so
yeah. The Cold War is heating
apparently,
back up again. It's
yeah.
crazy. Like,
And it was something like the missile can travel like 4 miles per second or something
yeah,
like that. Something crazy.
yeah,
We're there right now.
yeah,
So isn't it funny how like cyclical, like we're still
yeah,
dealing,
yeah.
you know?
Oh,
Um,
let's go back to this love story. Like, do you
yeah.
think there'll be a love story? You almost mentioned that, like maybe there'd be like a Russian
Yeah.
woman that rejected him, or it
Yeah,
couldn't work
yeah.
out, so maybe that's why he's angry. Yeah,
I don't know where that came from, totally left
yeah,
field, but it's Hollywood,
yeah.
right? So typically a lot of stuff revolves around romantic relationships
Right, right.
or lack of.
Yeah,
You know, you have to imagine again someone who's unhinged enough to just drop a bomb on somewhere.
yeah.
You know, was he loved as a child? You
Right.
know, what was his family situation like? Has he been loved as an adult?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, yeah, I guess it'll be ironic. Like, I can't have this, Russian woman, so I'm gonna
Mhm.
take it out on them or
Yeah.
whatever. Whatever like insecure men do.
If yeah, what would happen if a general was an incel?
Yeah.
Like, that's kinda
Yeah,
scary.
yeah, yeah. My God.
And speaking of which, of this topic being at the forefront of culture or whatever, did you see Oppenheimer?
Yes.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
that was very much an
Correct.
anti-nuclear war
Correct.
film that just came out last year.
Yeah. Last year.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Academy Award, all that.
Yeah, yeah, it did all of it. Yeah.
Um,
Alright, well, you ready to watch, Doctor Strangelove?
let's go.
Alright, let's do it. Attention, spoilers ahead. We are about to jump into our deep examination of the movie. So if you haven't watched it yet, I strongly recommend you do to fully enjoy this discussion. If you're already familiar with the film, here's a quick refresher to set the stage. Also, this discussion took place in December of 2024, before Elon Musk made his Nazi salute, which would obviously factor in. The character of Dr. Strangelove extends his arm in a similar Nazi salute, presumably against his will because he quickly tries to hold it down. Sadly, life is imitating art, and what might have been an over the top joke for Stanley Kubrick in 1964 is now our reality.
For more than a year, ominous rumors had been privately circulating among high-level Western leaders that the Soviet Union had been at work on what was darkly hinted to be the ultimate weapon, a doomsday device.
Group Captain, I'm afraid this is not an exercise. It looks like we're in a shooting war.
Hell.
I can no longer sit back and allow communist infiltration, communist indoctrination, communist subversion, and the international communist conspiracy to sap and impurify all of our precious bodily fluids.
We're still trying to figure out the meaning of that last phrase, sir.
There's nothing to figure out, General Turgidson. This man is obviously a psychotic. When you instituted the human reliability tests, you assured me there was no possibility of such a thing ever occurring.
Well, I don't think it's quite fair to condemn a whole program because of a single slip-up, sir.
Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room. What is going on here? I demand an explanation.
He went and did a silly thing. Well, I'll tell you what he did. He ordered his planes to attack your country. Well, let me finish, Dmitri. Well, listen, how do you think I feel about it?
Is that the whole point of the doomsday machine is lost? If you keep it a secret, why didn't you tell the world, eh?
It was to be announced at the party congress on Monday. As you know, the Premier loves surprises.
I first became aware of it during the physical act of love. Luckily, I was able to interpret these feelings correctly. Loss of essence. I can assure you it has not recurred, Mandrake. Women sense my power, and they seek the life essence. I do not avoid women, Mandrake, but I do deny them my essence.
Those boys were like my children, Mandrake. Now they let me down.
Oh, I'm sorry, I haven't got enough change. Could you make this a collect call, operator?
You mentioned the ratio of 10 women to each man. Wouldn't that necessitate the abandonment of the so-called monogamous sexual relationship? I mean, as far as men were concerned.
Regrettably, yes. But it is, a sacrifice required for the future of the human race.
Bombardier ready, sir.
Meet again. Don't know where. Don't know when. But I know we'll meet again. Some sunny day.
All right, so we just finished Dr. Strangelove. How do you feel, man?
Yes. Wow. So, yeah, the story held up amazingly. 1964.
64.
Okay. So, what is that? 60 years ago this year? 60 years ago,
that
right?
crazy?
On the dot?
Yeah.
I was actually shocked at, some hilarious parts. Still very identifiable.
Right.
You know?
Right.
It's a bunch of numbskulls in charge.
Yeah.
The obviously play on Jack the Ripper was hilarious.
Right. The general who was responsible for everything
responsible
going awry.
for this whole thing with his fluoride and his fluids.
Yes. Didn't that remind you of like conspiracy theorists now? And you're just like, not that there's no basis for that, but it just reminded me of Alex Jones and this whole, we're still dealing with sort of wackos
in positions of power. You know what I mean?
Exactly. It's kind of really frightening to think that RFK is going to be in charge of our health.
Yeah. Yeah.
He says he had a worm in his brain, and I don't know, man. Yeah, like this is a farce, and then now it's real life. It's kind
like
of
real life.
Yeah, I'm sure Stanley Kubrick, when he made this, was thinking like by the year 2024 they'll have figured out all this stuff, and
they'll have learned.
Exactly, they'll have learned, and we'll have nuclear power, and nobody will have to work, and everyone will just play. And if we make it through not killing ourselves with nukes, we all have learned and evolved as a society, but really not. It's just kind of cyclical. And
60 years ago to the year. Wow.
How did the humor land for you?
Some of it was great. You actually heard me laugh out loud on the part where president has to call the Russian president, but that was, to me, that was hilarious.
That was,
it's like trying to explain something to a child. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just not extreme. Extreme is not the word I want to use, but just very satirical. This is very on the nose, very extra, very Saturday Night Live-ish.
I was just thinking that, with the sort of almost bad comped, plane flying around. It almost felt like this could be an SNL sketch.
Yes,
and
correct.
It had the same vibes where, it's very satirical of like current events and taking it over the top, and the performances were purposely over the top.
Yeah.
Some of it doesn't land for me anymore. Like, and maybe it just didn't land ever for me. It feels a little bit like boomerish, boomer humor.
Yeah.
The parts that land for me the most are the government incompetency, and he doesn't have them change for a phone call. And you're just like, oh, man. What did you think of Peter Sellers? He was in 3 parts.
Yes.
So he's Dr. Strangelove, he's the president, and also the RAF general.
Wow. He's fantastic. I think he's fantastic. Outside of the farce element of it, I don't know what was up with the guy, Dr. Strangelove's arm. I don't know what that was about. If that was an actual condition or like, is it like Tourette's or like I don't know.
It felt kind of like that.
you
I
know?
think supposedly he's like a German ex-Nazi
Right.
rocket scientist who was either injured, kind of like Darth Vader style. Like, so
Yeah.
like he's got this sort of mechanical arm that's either built by Germans or whatever, and he can't control it completely.
Yeah.
That's definitely the most over the top thing when
Yeah,
he's like
for
doing
sure.
the Nazi salute. And I
Yeah.
feel like people love that stuff.
Yeah.
They see it as
Yeah.
like the funniest thing ever. Doesn't quite always land for me.
Correct.
But
Yeah,
what'd
but you
think?
know it's I mean it's just a play on it,
Right,
and
right.
and it's purposefully in there, especially with the extermination element of things.
Yes. It was funny when I was researching this movie and trying to find other movies that were similar. Because a
Uh-huh.
lot of the times when, you have a certain movie in your mind because, I've seen a thriller or I've
Yeah.
seen a erotic sex thriller from the
Right.
90s. And so I
Right.
expect this to be very kind of similar to Basic Instinct or something
Yeah.
like that. There's not a lot of movies that are
Yeah.
similar to this.
And
On the related, thing, it'll be all of Stanley Kubrick's movies.
Mhm.
But I'm like, but he didn't make another movie that was quite like this. That's
Yeah.
like a nuclear war movie, but also a satire. There's lots of other nuclear war movies.
Yeah.
The closest things I could think of were sort of Apocalypse Now,
Mm.
but it's not funny, but it's definitely like sort of condemning war
Yeah.
in this weird way. And then the latest thing that I could think of was Don't Look Up. Did you
Mm.
see that? That sort of environmental disaster movie. It was on
No.
Netflix with Leonardo DiCaprio and a whole bunch of
Mm.
people, and it's about this meteor that's coming to Earth, and they're like, "Don't look up because it's not even
Yeah.
real," and blah blah blah. And so
I
that
think I did see that one actually. I did see that.
J Law was in it.
Was there like at the end they're like kind of around the dinner
Yes,
table and then okay,
yes.
yes, I did
Yeah,
see
and
that.
he's basically like,
Yeah.
"We had it so good," and then
Yeah.
bam, the whole world ends. So that's the
Um
only movie that I can think of that's a
yeah.
little bit similar.
Leonardo DiCaprio goes on a rant in the news
Yes,
station, and
yes, that's the best part.
Tyler Perry's in that. Got it. Yeah,
Yes, it's Tyler Perry.
it's all
Kate
coming
Blanchett
back
as
now.
like
Yes,
Fox News people.
I
who
did.
are like,
Yeah,
he's like,
correct.
the president is lying to us.
You know,
Yeah.
I did see that. And another comp, maybe, and speaking of Netflix, did you watch Leave the World Behind?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. So maybe not quite the same, but
Yeah, but still
still
apocalyptic and sort of
apocalyptic.
yeah.
Correct. I guess if you take parts of it, if you take elements of the film, right?
Mhm.
So, for instance, the living underground element. There was a Matt Damon movie a couple of years ago
Right.
where everyone like shrunk and they had to go live
Yes,
underground.
yes. Downsizing,
Yeah,
right?
something
Yeah.
like that. What's the one with Keanu Reeves where he was outrunning on a motorcycle?
Yeah, oh man, what
He was
was
like
that?
outrunning like a yeah.
That's one of those
Um,
Roland Emmerich
yeah.
movies. And I think I remember seeing people talk about that like on YouTube, talking about the visual effects and how
hmm
it's kind of goofy because it's not realistic that he can obviously outrun a nuclear blast
Correct.
on a
Chain Reaction.
chain reaction. Okay.
Yeah, 1996.
Is that a good movie?
I just remember it. I just remember him driving.
You're right.
But along the lines of meteor projects, the one with again Morgan Freeman plays a president.
Mhm.
Um, con-
Right.
con-
Deep Impact.
Deep Impact.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. All these
So
apocalyptic
stuff like
movies.
that. I mean,
Yeah.
they're a dime a dozen.
What did you think of like all the farcical masculine imagery? It starts out with the
Yeah.
jet refueling, and then everyone's got a cigar, and at the very end, he's riding a giant missile
Right.
that like basically is like a giant
Right.
phallic symbol. And
You're right. Yeah, I mean, I think it's prevalent for that time.
right.
Right. I mean,
I feel like you nailed it. When you were thinking of these generals,
yeah.
and you were kind of like going off about like how they're compensating for something.
Yes.
That was definitely a theme in
Yeah.
this movie
Exactly.
because everybody's
Exactly.
either has a mistress and at the end they talk about breeding and how you'll have
Yes.
10 women to every one man, and they're all
Yeah.
excited even though the world has ended.
Yeah.
And
Correct.
so
Correct.
yeah.
Correct. So totally accurate. I was completely wrong about the woman though. About him.
Right. Yeah,
About
there
the
was
general. There's no woman.
well, in
There's
a
no
way,
woman.
he starts asking him about when did you get all these theories about
Yes.
the fluoride and the
Yeah.
fluids and all this. I think he was admitting to being impotent because he was like, I don't give any of my potency to a woman. I didn't do that or something like that. And I think that's him admitting that
Because of the fluoride in the water?
yeah, or like maybe he couldn't get it up. And
Yeah.
then this whole time, and then started blaming it on, oh, the
Yeah.
commies must be doing something, not his own fault.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
all stems from sort of like
Yeah.
an inability to get it up. And
Yeah.
now he's going to make the world pay for
Now
it.
he's gonna make everybody pay for it. Yep.
Maybe.
He just snaps one day.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know? You know, I guess it was interesting. So we talk about 60 years ago and protocol
Mm,
for military
right.
in situations like this. And so they broke down so much. You know, one of the primary purposes of film is to educate,
Mhm.
right? So even learning all that, there's been a ton of military movies since then. But just putting my mind into watching this in 1964,
Yeah,
right? How groundbreaking it must have been,
totally.
you know, for that time. And understanding all the protocols that are in place so that no one can just go rogue and
Right,
just
right.
bomb a country.
Mhm, mhm.
You know, that's really fascinating. And it's encouraging
Yeah,
to know that someone can't just fly off the rails. And
right. Yeah,
so,
they were definitely trying to
yes.
show how they built some fail
Yeah.
safes in, but then I think he had a weird roundabout thing and it was
Yeah.
all kind of circular logic where,
Yeah.
well, we have to have this non-fail safe to intimidate them so they can't get a surprise attack on us.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
the general even says to the president, like, you signed off on it, so it's kind of his fault. Or
Yeah.
yeah, reminds me of the whole kind of government incompetency. And
Yeah.
if you have ever been to a DMV and you
Yeah.
realize how much paperwork or
Yeah.
and how you can actually renew a license really easy if you get the right person who knows what
Yeah.
they're doing, and then there's one person who's going to give you a hard time and be like, no, you don't have the right signature on this, or there's not the
Exactly.
T isn't dotted or crossed, or the I's aren't dotted. So
Yeah.
it is scary. Who do you think should be in charge? Because he almost says, when it comes to war,
Yeah.
generals shouldn't be in charge.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
goes, well, but I don't think the politicians should be in
Yeah.
charge. And I'm like, well, that's a
Yeah.
good point, because politicians in our day and age are kind of crazy
Yeah.
and not
Hella
thinking
crazy.
of the best thing for us. So,
Hella
and then the other
crazy.
idea would be AI. And then James Cameron has a thought about that. So, yeah, what are your thoughts about?
Yeah, my thought. So when it comes to like war, right? If we're
Mhm.
specifically talking about war or signing off on attacking a country
Yeah.
or something like that, I personally believe there should be like a commission, right? It
Mhm.
should be a group of people, ranging backgrounds, ranging creeds,
Mm.
ranging levels of critical thinking. I
Mhm.
mean, you want people to be able to think
Yeah.
critically, but like just a range of perspectives, right? Not just one person.
Right.
That's how I feel personally. I think there should be commission of people that sign off on attacking another
Yeah.
country. Now, if we're acting in self-defense, that's different, right?
Right. Right.
Because obviously, okay, we have the right. Everyone has the right to defend
Mhm.
themselves. Outwardly, unprovoked, unsolicited, like attack on another country. There should totally be a group of people involved in that decision.
Yeah. I think that's what they're trying to do with AI, right? Is
Mm,
they were, even if it's a drone just,
mm,
attacking one or two people, they always want a human in the loop
yes.
so that
Yeah.
someone has to sign off and go,
Correct.
yes, okay, arm the warhead and then do it.
Correct.
Because if it becomes all automated, but then the
Yeah.
counter to that is like, but then will you lose precious seconds
Yeah.
and they'll get away because
Yeah.
someone has to review this thing. And it reminds me of the movie where he says, well, with this failsafe, it doesn't have a failsafe, then you're screwed. And I was thinking of the imagery of the war room here and in war games. I think war games may have been the first time I remember seeing the double key thing
Mm,
was in war games, where at the
mm,
very start of the movie he says turn your key, because it has to be
yeah.
two people
Correct.
consenting to be like, yes, all right, we're going to arm this nuclear warhead.
Correct.
Can't just be
Correct.
one crazed person.
Correct.
So I guess that's the way it's done now. I think kids today are more concerned with getting shot by an active shooter in school, whereas we were like, hide under the desk
Yeah.
because there could be a
Eh,
nuclear attack,
or an earthquake.
or an
He is
earthquake.
like,
Yeah, yeah.
or folks who actually live through, the Hiroshima bombings
Yeah.
and all that. So
Yeah, I'm curious what the Japanese think of this
yeah,
movie because when you watch their anime, the nuclear bomb looms large in a lot of their
very
psyche.
much.
Obviously, like there's the opening shot of Akira is just every anime that I ever watched. There's like a nuclear explosion at some
Hmm.
point. Godzilla, his whole thing is about nuclear
Yeah.
energy. And what do you think people are concerned about most these days?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends, right? Because oh my God. To a lot of people, their kids' restrooms are a big problem.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So
How does that
it's
compare to
like,
nuclear war,
yeah,
though? Come on, like.
you know what I mean? So I guess it depends on who you ask at that particular moment in time as of,
Mhm.
what is it,
Right.
December 3rd. Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at what's happening in the Middle East right now and you look at a family just trying to survive and there's
Mhm.
literal like bombs raining
Yeah.
down every day, their worry is vastly different from
Mhm.
yours and mine. So perspective is key. I don't know. I mean, across America, there's just so much so many polarizing topics.
Mhm.
Religion,
Yeah.
right? People, so the LGBTQ community, again, going back to kids' restrooms. So it all depends on who you ask on what particular day.
Mhm.
I think any adult should be concerned about nuclear warfare.
Right.
And because of the people in wherever who are with their hands on the button, school shootings, of course, you mentioned, there's a lot. I guess you never want to shame anyone for their beliefs, especially if that's the way they were raised.
Sure.
You hope people try to come out of that and read and educate
Yeah.
themselves and understand that some things don't deserve the same amount of worry as others.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially when like elementary school bathroom is an issue, but elementary school kids bringing guns to school is not.
Yes.
You,
Yeah.
so stuff like that. I guess it's kind of you hope will eventually come out of that. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's weird to see how certain things remain the same from Doctor Strangelove, and then
yeah,
but then we're concerned about other things, but they're
right.
sort of equally absurd. Where like
Yeah,
we're kind of ignoring the most dangerous thing that's affecting people, and but then fighting about
yeah,
silly things.
yeah.
They had that one line. Which supposedly I think is the funniest line in the movie, which is you can't fight in the war room,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that was
Yeah,
that's supposedly the
right.
biggest laugh, and the irony of it
The irony of it,
hits
correct.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, apparently when Kubrick was making this, it was based on a book called Red Alert,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
was not comedic at all. It was a very, very forensic and procedural thing about a general or like an air pilot that went rogue and then was going to like bomb Russia to start the
Mhm.
whole world war.
Jeez.
And then when he started making it, he was like, this is so absurd. If I have somebody do this, people are going to laugh. And then he decided, fuck, I have to make this a
Mhm.
comedy because that's the only way to deal with a subject this serious would be
Mhm.
to make it absurd and laugh at it. So
Mhm.
I think that's what the title is, or how I stopped worrying about the bomb
Yeah.
and loving the bomb, because he's like, you
Wow.
know what, fuck it. I have to just laugh because there's
Yeah.
no other way. Did you think that mix worked of like sort of serious subject and absurd humor?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, to laugh about something, I guess, helps you digest it a little
Yeah,
better.
totally.
So, sure, I think so. And again, more so, it's just the play on these guys with these enormous amounts of power.
Yeah.
The own U.S. Army is coming to the base, and now he's attacking U.S.
I
citizens,
know. I'm like,
U.S. military personnel, and saying they're commies.
yeah.
It's like complete ridiculousness. So yeah, I don't know, man.
That's a really good
Yeah,
point. I always like to think that if it comes down to it, yes, you have to follow orders, but then at the same time, if the order
discernment.
is to shoot
Yeah,
another American citizen, you're like, that's where we get like a
yeah,
breakdown.
yeah. You got to be able to have discernment.
Yeah, and just like do what's right. Like I don't care what someone says. That's part of the machine of government and bureaucracy where
Yeah,
it gets so twisted around that you
yeah,
get people to fire on their own people, and you're just like, what
yeah,
the hell? Like,
yeah.
did you see the influence of this on anything like recent?
Hmm.
Have you seen Fallout?
Like 3 people have told me to watch Fallout and need to go. So no, I have
Mm,
not,
okay.
but I've heard great things about it.
Right. I think this definitely influenced Fallout. Some of the
Wow.
vibe, like
Yeah.
you know, the old timey music mixed with
Yeah.
sort of nuclear devastation, and I think they definitely pick
Fallout.
that up and put that in there. And
I'm gonna have to check. Yeah, because I think you're probably the fifth person to talk to me about Fallout. Yeah, you know, one of the most you're talking about iconic lines, but I would say probably the single most iconic line was when Dr. Strangelove was speaking to the Russian, what was he, embassy person? Who was he?
the ambassador.
The ambassador. When Dr. Strangelove was speaking to the Russian ambassador, and he says, "This doomsday thing is a great concept to keep everyone in check,
Right.
but also you're supposed to tell people that you have a doomsday thing. Why haven't you?" And he says, the ambassador says, "Well, we were supposed to tell people on Monday, like a couple of days away." You know, that's the movie right there.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just I don't want to call it a lack of communication, but a what they call it, dilly dallying of you know, the processing of communication. So I think when I heard that, I was like, oh man, that was it. Like, yeah, you know, keep everybody in check, but you got to tell people that you have this thing. So yeah.
What do you think of James Earl Jones? He had a very
Oh
small part, but
yeah. He meaty at the end there. Loved him. You know, he's great. I think he achieved the level of success he did because he's great in everything.
Yeah.
He did very convincing. His voice is
I know,
obviously
even just
very.
anytime you hear it, you're just like, oh, there he is.
Yeah. So
if you have hindsight of today and just knowing, you know, how good he can be, when I watch Jack Ryan series where he's like sort of like a CIA director, I'm like, oh, he would have been so perfect in the war room, you know, with a bunch of bars on his chest about you know, playing a general or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh man, if they had just plucked him out and been like, oh, you're so good, let's take you out of this out of the plane, and you could do a little bit more stuff in the war room, you know. But
yeah.
Where do you rank it in Kubrick's?
You kind of have to do a duality type thing. You have to look at it at the time,
yes, for
which is
sure.
1964, and then today. So I think the story, like I said, I think holds up very well. But in putting myself in the mind of a person in 1964, no matter what age range, I could see how that could be very influential, very like fear mongering ish as well, you know. But also the messaging. It's like if people are able to look deeper into something, you know, instead of just a surface, it's just like, you know, love, man. It always comes back down to love. Number one, love, respect, do unto others that you would want to be done to yourself.
Was there anything in it that felt dated to you, or that's not so relevant anymore?
Well, I mean, the visuals, obviously, but
yeah.
I mean, if we're not just strictly talking about the visuals, I mean, for sure,
You mean like the like the visual effects of the
visual
planes
effect,
and stuff like that?
yeah.
Because I still think the cinematography was really strong, and the war room looked
the shots,
cool.
the shots were great, but
yeah.
the visual effects and
he fixes. He gets a lot better in 2001. You're like, man, those special effects hold up. That's like 1968. You're like, this is flawless. This is better than CGI. But I don't think he had quite gotten there.
He
but,
gotten there. Yeah,
I'm sure he was just not concerned with that.
No, it was more about the story.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I would hope to God that these days we don't have to use coin operated phones. I would hope we fix that.
You know, but speaking of which, we are so reliant on cell phones now that I worry about not having a landline around. You know, and
so
I
have one.
You do?
Yeah, my wife and I. So when we bought our house, so we have a generator and a landline.
Shit. Okay.
And so, but what was interesting though is we use AT&T, and they tried to sell us the digital landline.
Right.
And I'm like, dude, you're not hearing what I'm saying. What's the point? If there's a blackout, it's not going to work.
Totally.
You know. And so I was like, no, very adamant about that. So we got it. So
that
we
almost feels like a scene from this movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, why don't you go for the digital one? And I'm like, no, the point. I have a digital phone in my hand.
Right.
I don't need, you know.
Like it was so ridiculous.
That's
so we have it was
Haven't
actually
you seen
really
Dr.
ridiculous.
Strangelove when the guy hasn't changed to make the call to the president? Like,
so we have a generator that runs on our gas line.
Oh, okay.
And then we have a landline phone.
Okay.
So those are two things I was like, yo, I think, So not full on like what do you call it, preppers, not
Right,
full
right.
on preppers.
You're not building a
Yeah,
shed with
yeah.
a, nuclear fallout shelter or
But
anything like that.
if we do have a big quake, because this year we've
That's
had a
smart.
ton of
Yeah.
earthquakes
Oh
this
yeah.
year.
Oh yeah.
And so that's always my thing, especially growing up here. Folks that remember the big Northridge
Right.
earthquake,
Right.
right? So I was here for that. We had quite a few huge ones, and it's just like you always just want to make sure that you have some safeguards in place.
That's so funny that it's not funny, but interesting that you have the earthquake in your head because of that
Yeah.
disaster that you experienced here. Whereas I went to college and lived in New York through
Mm.
September 11th
Oh
and the
wow.
blackout, and that's what
Yeah.
makes me think about because all the
Jeez.
phones were like toast, like as far
Yeah.
as cellular reception. So
Wow.
everyone was like, I can't get through to my parents. They're freaking
Mhm.
out or
Mhm.
whatever. And a friend of mine who had a landline
Yeah.
had that phone, just
Oh wow.
clicked it in and said,
Yeah.
"You want to make a call?"
Jeez.
Makes me think like I gotta keep that old landline phone. Do you understand why this movie was a classic or is a classic?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. I mean, period. It all comes down to story, anyways, with
Right. Right.
filmmaking. So I would say hands down the story.
Mm-hmm.
After that, the characters.
Yeah.
The
Yeah. Yeah.
characters are very memorable, and then just the learning aspect of how the Air Force works in these type of situations. Again, I'm not going to call it abuse of power
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like General Jack the Ripper, who was out of his mind at this point, not sure he was completely aware of what he was doing. Because also, was that the first time in cinema that we'd seen War Room?
I
Do you
think so.
know?
I can't think of another time where we saw
Yeah,
something quite like that.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So even introducing audiences to the inside of Pentagon War Room,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
memorable.
Countless movies have had the same
Yeah,
scenes,
correct,
where the president's on the line and you gotta
correct.
meet in the war room. Let's talk this over. What are we gonna
Yeah,
do for this?
yeah,
Countless movies have used that same premise.
yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of an enduring piece of film. When I'm thinking of all this, I guess you'd call it male toxicity now, with all these maniac generals who are like, those damn Ruskies are poisoning our water and poisoning our
Mm,
fluids and all this stuff. And
yeah.
like, why do we still have that in in our society? It's crazy to me. Is it because a personality like that or somebody with that much aggro energy will succeed
Yeah.
in working their way up the ladder?
Mm.
You want some aggression or you want, that's the only way to get up there. So how do we get those people to not do that and get more peaceful people to get up into
Yeah.
positions of power? It's
Yeah, I don't
you
I
you
I don't
can't you
know.
can't have both
Yeah.
unless you get peaceful citizens to like forcibly work in the military or something like
Yeah.
that. You know what I'm getting
Well,
at?
I
Like,
do, I do. Well, I think the answer is it's a little bit layered, but
mm,
to start, to become a general, you have to work your way up from like cadet or
yeah,
whatever it
yeah,
is,
yeah.
right? So we're talking about people who have seen war in
Right,
person,
right.
been on the
Hmm.
ground fighting, and then worked their way up to officer or captain or whatever the ranks
Right,
are. I
right.
don't know everything, but you're talking about if a person makes general after, I don't know if it's 20 years, I don't know how long you have to serve before you're eligible to
Hmm.
get promoted to that, but they've seen a lot, they've become hardened, right?
Right,
They've probably seen people die right in front of
right,
their face,
right,
some of their
right,
friends
right,
maybe, so I think it just makes them hardened,
right.
their psyche, it makes them
They
hardened
understand the
to this
cost.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah, the cost. And so I think maybe, but it's kind of like when fathers are like overprotective of like their daughters, maybe,
Hmm. Hmm.
because actually he said, funny enough, I just caught myself. Jack the Ripper, he says in there, those guys out there were like my kids.
That's
Do you
right. Yeah,
remember he
yeah,
said
yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
He says they betrayed me when they
They gave up.
surrendered. When
Yeah,
they
yeah, yeah, yeah.
surrendered, he says, "Oh, they were like my kids out there."
Hmm.
I just put that together. So I think there's an element of just their perspective, right?
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
hardens them
Yeah,
and they feel like they are protecting the rest of us.
yeah.
Now, not all generals are like this,
Right,
obviously, but
right,
if we're just talking about the character, it becomes to a detriment to everyone else and they just don't know.
right.
That's what it is on that side of the coin, so to
Yeah.
speak.
I think the irony now is that it's not the generals that are crazy, it's the
Yeah,
politicians that are crazy. And
politicians,
so,
yeah,
and
people
then
driven.
that is, you don't have to work your way up the government chain to become president.
Mm,
You just gotta convince enough people to vote for you and
Yeah.
then get the money. Whereas like maybe you should have to work in the
Yeah.
government to get up there.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe in democracy and
Yeah.
whoever gets the most votes should
Well,
be president. But
funny enough, and ironically enough, it goes down to the argument about most qualified for the job, right?
right.
Isn't that interesting, right? Like
Mhm.
who's like you would think that again, no matter what nationality, race, ethnicity, creed, whatever,
Yeah.
in any job, like the best person for the job should get the job,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But then when you get into politics and leadership and government, there's so much nepotism, so much like backdoor
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
and all that. Instead of, like you said, there should be formal training just like anything else. Imagine being an electrician and you don't have training to be an electrician. You
Yeah.
probably kill yourself, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like on a basic level. So
Just the belief that you are the best electrician isn't
yeah,
enough
just
for
the
you to
belief,
be like, you know.
just the
Yeah.
belief. I'm the best electrician.
Exactly.
I have no training,
Exactly.
but you know, yeah, that's absolutely hilarious. So, but you know what, too, right? You also have to look at the past
Mhm.
because we've gotten here. Like, it's not like we just woke up and we're
That's
in this
true.
place.
Right. Right.
So, whatever this country's destiny and how we got here, you know, you have to look at everything that's happened over, you know, however many years. People say the decline started with like Nixon and Reagan
Yeah. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
whatever it is, but
We're close to Dr. Strangelove. He
yeah,
would point to Kennedy's
you
assassination.
know,
You know, so many people were assassinated in the 60s. Martin Luther
oh
King,
my God,
RFK.
you know.
Um,
So you have to examine how and why we got here as
mhm.
of, you know, as of 2024 and this, you know, this election and all that. So it's not just an
Mhm.
overnight thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that's a takeaway that we all need to examine as well. Yeah.
So you see why this is a classic. How did this movie compare to the movie that you had in your mind?
Oh yeah,
Was
I
it very
mean,
different, or
I
was
was
it pretty
way
much
off.
you were way off?
I was
Yeah.
way. I mean, well, not on everything, not on
Mhm.
everything, but I think one of the first questions you asked was like, what's the reason
Mhm.
that you feel like the general drops the bomb? So I was completely wrong
Right.
on that.
Right. Right.
So like he was just crazy. He just lost
Pretty
it.
much.
Was it The Rock with
Sean Connery and
Sean Connery,
Nicholas
Nicolas
Cage. Yeah,
Cage? Yeah,
yeah. And the guy wants to like drop, is it biological
yeah,
warfare or something?
biological
Those
warfare.
green bulbs or something.
Yes, it was during a 49ers game and
Mhm.
he wanted to I think one got shot off at the end, but then it ended up
Yeah.
maybe hitting like short. It fell short, obviously.
Right, right.
But again, there's been so many instances of rogue people, Denzel in Training Day.
Yeah.
Like rogueness is like a thing, you know.
Yeah,
People,
yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
sells.
Mhm,
Rogueness
mhm.
sells. So I think that's something that is relevant today still.
The general, what is it? Is it Ed Harris who plays the general in The Rock
Yes,
though? He at
yes.
least, when they call his bluff, he's like,
Hmm.
"What are you crazy? I'm not going to kill 30 million people or whatever." And he
Yeah,
actually stops.
yeah.
And then I think it's his henchman or somebody
Hmm.
who's like, "No, let's go through with it." Blah blah
Correct,
blah. So it's like
correct.
it's always. I just pray every night that like there's somebody with
Somebody,
sanity who is like,
yeah,
no, we can't go through
yeah.
with this, please. You know, I was kind of surprised in this one that the president seemed reasonable. You
It
know,
was
and
very
he's
reasonable.
like, I've heard enough from you. You know, how do
Yeah,
we do this? And it was kind of funny. I almost felt like there wasn't enough urgency. I'm like,
yeah,
don't you guys realize this? We're on the brink of nuclear war. And the
yeah,
guy's just like, keep your hands up. And I'm like,
yeah,
dude, just tell him
yeah,
like I need to talk to the president right fucking now.
yeah.
And I feel like that's also Kubrick's style. Kubrick is
Mm.
very cold and kind of just methodical. What did you think of the final end of just like boom?
Just
Just
all out,
yeah.
or I think
Like
it's.
you when I asked you, you're like, I hope it doesn't end
I
like
hope it
that, but
doesn't
man,
hit, and it exactly did the exact
yeah.
opposite. I mean, it's scary, dude.
Yeah.
It's scary. It really is to just know that that's a possibility. And I mean, even going back to what I was saying a minute ago about how did we get here? How did that aspect of wanting to destroy like a whole country or a whole city is like, how do you come up with the thought of like nuclear war?
Right.
Like let's make nuclear bombs. That's what we want to spend taxpayer money on.
Right.
Let's have a horde of nuclear bombs
Yeah.
so we could all wipe each other out one
Right,
day.
right.
You know, think about like the logic behind that, right?
I mean, that's what Oppenheimer's all
I
about, you
mean,
know?
you
Like, you
know,
got to defeat the Nazis. And so they were like, could we have won without it? Probably. Would it cost more lives? Would we be in a better place now? It's arguable. I don't know. But yeah, that's the ultimate irony, right? Is that
right,
the scientists who created it were
right,
trying to save lives,
right,
you know, by creating this.
right.
What's the
Yeah,
quote? I've become
yeah,
death incarnate
yeah,
or whatever. And
yeah.
you're just like, he knew, you
And
know?
the sustainable energy aspect of
Right,
it is
right.
one thing, right?
Hmm.
But then you weaponize it, that's totally different. So it's like if that's where it can if that's the iteration of it, like the weapon just came from, oh, hey, if we just alter the this and that, we can make a bomb.
Right,
I could see how generals like Jack the
right.
Ripper get a hold of that and be like, yeah,
Yeah,
let's make a weapon instead of, it's supposed to be something literally clean energy. It's supposed to be something
right.
efficient, helpful,
Yeah.
and all those things, but instead it gets flipped on its side and now it's detrimental.
I think that's what humankind has been dealing with technology
Yeah.
since the dawn of time. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, we have fire. You know, we can cook our food now. Hey, we have fire. We can
Yeah.
set each other on fire or something, you
Yeah.
know,
Oh my
and now it's
God.
going to be AI. And some people are like, AI will save us.
Yeah.
We'll automate all the cars so there'll be no more accidents. AI will work us out of the environmental crisis.
Yeah.
But then there'll be a general like Jack the
Yeah.
Ripper to be like, oh, but we can
Yeah.
use AI to totally control all the people and create
Yeah.
all this propaganda and
Yeah.
misinformation and mistrust. So
Yeah.
I think maybe that's the lesson to
Yeah.
learn is that, like, you know, whatever technology
Yeah.
comes, there people will use it for good and
Yeah.
bad. So
I heard a theory one time that storytelling is responsible for all of this.
mhm,
So like the AI thing, for instance, what is it? iRobot,
mhm.
The Matrix, all these other things.
Terminator.
Terminator, exactly. I heard a theory that it wouldn't have happened unless, like, if people had never seen it or
Right.
or heard of it in a story,
Mhm.
it would have never have happened.
Right.
The iteration when people look at AI and how it's being implanted into robots, they think back to movies like
Mhm.
Terminator, The Matrix, whatever else, and that vision from the film is what they envision in
And
their
then it becomes
minds,
real, yeah.
and then it becomes, either a fearful thing or I think there's already been instances of different AIs like gaining whatever consciousness
Mhm.
or giving answers where it's like,
Right,
oh,
right,
like,
surprising
damn,
answer.
this is like
Yeah.
what? Like, how does it
Right,
know this
right.
thing?
Yeah, wasn't there a
Yeah.
Google employee who was like, "Oh, it's
Yeah.
way already out of our control, and then the things that it's been saying are crazy," and
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
kind of scary. Like,
It
don't plug that into,
very.
you know, the war room or anything. Yeah, I think movies and storytelling definitely points the way in a
Mhm.
certain aspect. I still can't get over Minority Report. I remember seeing Tom Cruise use his hands to like zoom in and stuff like that. They didn't explain it to you, but you just intuitively knew what he was
Correct.
doing. And
Correct.
then the next thing you know, we're zooming in on our iPhone using the same
Yeah.
gestures, and you're just like, how ahead of its time was that movie? It was so good.
Yeah.
And I'm sure people saw that and were like, let's like Steve Jobs, like, let's make
Yeah,
that
that's
happen.
right.
That's so fucking cool. We got to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And one last story about
Alright.
did you ever see The Day After? It was a made-for-TV movie in the
Mm.
80s about, like, total nuclear devastation.
No, I have not seen that.
It is so depressing, and I
Oh
don't
my
think it's
God.
available. Maybe you could stream it on Plex or something like that, but it's
Mhm.
oh god, Jason Robards is in it,
Mm.
and it basically just shows nuclear devastation and the fallout and how just, like, everyone's gonna die of, like, radiation poisoning. There'll be no food. It's, like, so depressing.
Yeah.
Apparently Ronald Reagan, our president, saw that and was so moved by it that he was like, I got to reach out to the Kremlin and like kind of make peace.
Mhm.
So that is a real world benefit from a movie, you know,
Facts. Yeah.
and it totally ties into this movie about the fear of nuclear war and just how learning lessons from the past is one thing, but then also movies can peer into the future too
Mhm.
and be like,
Mhm.
look, this is what could happen. Let's get
Yeah.
real and do something about this because it could go
Yeah.
this way. And
Yeah.
so I think that's what this movie and that movie are both kind of
Yeah.
communicating.
I think it's
Let's
great. I think it's a great analysis.
yeah,
Yeah.
but let's hope it doesn't come to that.
No. Please. Please no. And these perpetual enemies too, so to speak. Again, going back 60 years, it's like, like we're still at odds with Russia, like still it's like put someone else in charge,
Right. Yeah, it's getting tired here. Come on. Like, there's so many people
Dude.
that, we were better back then because we had an adversary and something to fight for.
Yeah.
But, I don't think so.
Yeah, you shouldn't want conflict. That's
Yeah,
not a good
exactly. Like, why can't we just get over it? Yeah, and it's
You
still
know?
Russia, and it's still.
I'm a sports guy, big time football fan. Used to play myself, but it's like even in sports, someone has to win, someone has to lose. Right? So in all of this, someone's going to lose. Right? So it's just like, gosh, yeah.
What's the lesson from war games is like the only way to win is to not play.
Yeah.
Right? That's what the computer learns at the end of war games. Spoiler alert for 50-year-old movie. But I thought you were going to go into classic rivalries from the NFL.
Oh
That's
man,
what you're going to talk
I mean,
because,
we can't,
U.S. versus Russia. That's kind of a classic
Yeah,
rivalry. That's been
for
going
sure.
on for a long time, and so
For sure. Yeah, and haven't they been like banned from some Olympic sports? Weren't they banned this past Olympics?
Yeah, well, they were banned for.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was directly for Ukraine, but I know that they were dosing.
They had a
or,
doping
like,
scandal.
Yeah, they had a
Yeah.
doping issue.
Yeah.
So, well, I think they found the perfect solution for that because it was the athletes were allowed to compete,
Yes.
but not for
Under
Russia. They were
correct.
under some like.
Yeah, I
random
remember
thing.
that. Yeah, like a surname
Yeah,
or whatever. it
exactly.
was.
So it's like,
Yeah.
yes, don't penalize the athletes for whatever their government is forcing them to take juice or whatever, but let them participate. But come on,
Yeah.
Russia, come on.
Come on.
What's your next Kubrick film then?
I may go back and watch 2001,
Mm-hmm.
and I have to finish now that we've spoken. I have to
Clockwork
finish
Orange?
Clockwork.
Yeah.
So, and then we'll take it from there.
All right.
Take it from there. Yeah.
All right. Sounds good.
Thank you for having me on.
Great having you. All right, man. Peace. Thank you for listening to the Movie in Your Mind podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Follow us on socials, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, and Facebook. Email us at themovieinyourmindpodcast@gmail.com. Theme song track Odeon by Tomorrow's Tigers.